Welcome to the Sales School podcast. We hold three things very dear to us. Number one, help each other become better sellers. Number two, share knowledge generously. And number three, try and give actionable recommendations. So that is like the manifesto of the Sales School podcast. Today, it's my distinct pleasure to welcome our guest, who is Sandeep Shekhar, Global Sales Vice President at ERP. Sandeep, welcome to the Sales School podcast.
Happy to be here, Bhaskar.
Why don't you start us off with a little bit about yourself? And maybe you can also tell a little bit about ERPNext.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a husband or a lovely wife based out of Bangalore. Professionally, if you talk about me, I come up with about 17 years of experience in the B2B SaaS-based sales. Primarily, my journey started back in 2005, where the concept was relatively new. What is SaaS and all those? Picked up some skill sets when it comes to like setting the teams, coaching, mentoring, something that I'm very passionate about. Talking about ERPNext, it's a 100% open source free application for small and mid-sized businesses where you need to streamline and automate your entire end-to-end operations. It's very lucid, very agile kind of application that really help manufacturers, distribution services, and different kind of domains to bring the entire company in one platform. We compete with companies like ACPs and Oracles of the world. And we are definitely looks like giving them run for their life when it comes to competition. Or bring it head on.
That's very interesting. I think FOSS is a very important movement. I'm glad we have someone from that movement, so to speak, joining us today. So Sandeep, like you know, the topic of our discussion today is the importance of Sales Playbook. It's very interesting to have you on the show because you have created playbooks from scratch. You have implemented them. You have iteratively improved them. So no one better than you to talk to us about this. Let's get started with the definition itself, Sandeep. So what is a sales playbook?
Yeah, that's my favorite topic. I think and I'm super tactical. I love to build from scratch, build a team and a couple of organizations. Playbook is, I think, in my opinion, something written. You can start small and start documenting. It could be a go-to approach for getting things done by people at the company. It could be the process workflows and standard operating procedures. It encompasses different kind of aspects of the organizations to be your people, the problem that you're solving, the business cadence that you want to follow, your one-on-ones, scorecards. It should talk about problems you're trying to solve for your prospect, what's expected of your people at the organization on daily, weekly, and monthly. What's the standard of excellence that you have defined for the predictable and sustainable outcome? I can go on and on and on, but it's just a vast topic to talk about. The key elements are your people, the problem, the product, the process. Typically, that's what I think would define a sales playbook.
Sure. I like that part we started off with that. First off is something written. I think that's a key point. That kind of begs the question, why do we even need a sales playbook?
Right. I mean, that's very interesting. I'm so flabbergasted about the fact when I interact with a lot of leadership, part of the community, just kind of boggles my mind that a lot of organizations simply don't have a playbook. Not necessarily just for the sales playbook. It could be like your onboarding, could be the marketing, it could be a playbook for your managers and directors. I always like to start a conversation with why. I Google how to write a playbook. I was presented with hundreds of results, blogs, and found there are so many muddy water ideas floating around it. Everybody loves to talk about it. When it comes to the playbook, you need to document what success looks like and not what the sales process looks like. Sales process could be one of the pieces, the puzzles that you're solving and try to document and get the buy-in from your team. But it's like laying the foundation. It helps you with the onboarding, scaling, where you are growing as an organization as well. You need it when you aren't there anymore. So as a VP sales or director sales, if I'm leading a sales team, you want to make sure that people can lean onto those documents if I'm not going to be there. You need something to reference back to when your manager or top reps isn't there. It's a document of, I would say, agreed upon the best practices for success. I've seen an organization struggling and going completely directionless where you don't have a playbook. So that's my take on and 2 cents that I want to give.
Sure. Well, I think that's a very interesting take. So basically you're saying that To operate as a team, you need a common language, and that common language is that sales playbook.
Everybody needs to be singing the same song. I mean, imagine you are a startup and you just raised capital of say $5 million or $10 million or whatever the money is. Your investors walk in and ask each sales team members, hey, what kind of process do you follow in terms of your follow-ups? What your discovery or qualification looks like? What's your 30-second commercial? You are given a blank page and you are asked to write your processes. And imagine everybody is coming with a completely different ideas in the process.
Yeah,
It's very hard to kind of put things into the perspective that what's working for you and what's not. And I think that gives you the common ground. You keep on pivoting your playbook every quarter, maybe every month if you get it out, and build your stories, you tricks of the trades, tips, stories, and all those kind of things coming together. So that's why you need something that you can document.
sure, sure. The next question I have for you, Sandeep, is you've already defined what a playbook is, why it is important. And sometimes it's interesting if you make a distinction of what is not a playbook, right? So maybe you can also tell us what is not a sales playbook so that at least the audience is very clear about what it is and what it is not.
The common mistakes I see having interacted with several organizations, like I said earlier, is that they don't have a playbook. A sales playbook is not about the script or objection handling techniques. Yes, it's a part of it, like I said, but it's a documented, agreed upon set of process and workflows and the standard procedures that you want people to follow and bring those ideas in together. But a lot of time I see that the sales playbook has a lot of missing elements. Like they don't talk about the people, the problems. Why do those problems exist? The mistake that I see in the playbook is talks about script. Well, the script doesn't tell anything if you don't bring your own tonality into it. If you don't practice and put hundreds of hours of practicing and rehearsing and internalizing it, it doesn't work that way. So for me, the playbook has a lot of different kind of chapters and elements that help organization to scale and grow and help build a world-class sales team that you desire to have within your organization.
Yeah, yeah. I think you made a very clear distinction there that a sales playbook is both a strategy tool and a tactical tool. So you might have come up with tactics, and people often feel that is the end all and be all of the sales work, but that is not the case. So, and I think I also like your point about continuously iterating on it because you don't get all these ideas on the day you're trying to write the book.
If you write a sales playbook and you put it on somewhere in the shelf and it's just kind of dust piling upon it, you're not referencing back to it, what's the point? This document is breathing. You get a good stories, you get a good call, record it. You have somebody who did 200% of the code. You want to write about the story.
So let's take a bit of a scenario and see how this plays out. Let's say there is a hypothetical company A that has a sales playbook. And there is a company B that does not have a sales playbook. Both these companies are going about their sales cycle. They're talking to customers. They're trying to onboard new team members. They're hiring. So what's going to happen to these two companies? One that has a playbook, the other that does not. What's going to happen to these?
Oh, boy, that's a great question. So I've seen similar kind of organization. They're competing with each other. One is really rocketing when it comes to, blowing their numbers through the roof. And company B in that kind of a situation where you don't have a playbook, they're really, really struggling because obviously you cannot manage things if you cannot measure. I'm a big fan of analogy. Can you imagine a professional sports team without a playbook or a band without that step list? Coming back to company B, without the playbook, it's hard to measure what's working and not. And it may deter you from making your sales outcome or customer success outcome predictable, repeatable, sustainable, and profitable for the long haul. So in this kind of scenario, company B, they'll not be able to figure out who your right personas are. Maybe, you were lucky that this quarter went well and you got deals and the business is falling on your lap, but can you make it repeatable if you don't know what goods look like? So you have to define that. What are the personas? What problems that you were solving? What problems that's even existing in the industry right now? Why is that problem? And what are the implication and impact of those problems? You need to understand those and you need to document those so that people can just lean on to those documents.
Yeah. So in the absence of everyone doing the best that they can do, I think company A without the sales book will either probably stagnate or probably decline. And the company that has the sales playbook will probably do justice to the capital that they have raised. At least probably they'll have a more scalable process.
And I'm a big fan of something that I learned from one of my mentors, that you have to create your BPS system, which is behavior, process, and skills. The behavior is the virtue that you kind of, and value is something that you believe in. So what defines a good behavior, not personally, professionally, in terms of that, what are the 10 things that you want to do that defines a good goal?
Yeah.
The implication of not asking those problem-based discovery questions. And if you're not able to do that and define in the sales playbook, then imagine how difficult the road ahead is going to be for the sales team and the organization. You're shooting at everything that's moving in the dark and hoping something will stick.
Yeah. And I have personally also seen companies struggle with onboarding in the absence of a playbook. So they would go and hire, let's say, 10 SDRs or 10, interns, sales interns or something like that, and kind of let them do their thing. Have you observed that as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like, walking in the kitchen and thinking about, hey, you have to prepare a tea, but you were figuring out where the tea leaves are, where the utensils are.
Yeah.
And, it's a blind spot for any SDR. And remember, SDR is a junior sales role. You may come with 6 months or 1 year's experience, worst case, maybe, a fresher. You're coming to the organization and you are told, hey, go ahead, here's the script, go and figure it out.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
And if I would be at SDR, I'll be running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And I simply would have no idea what I'm supposed to do. And then you are setting up for failure for those people because you need direction. Nobody joins that organization to fail, right?
Yeah.
So what you want is proper guidance, proper onboarding process. Day one, what your day seven going to look like? What are the industry traits that you need to learn? What terminologies you need to focus on? I'm a big fan of something called as a status alignment question that you ask. That what are the industries paradigm shift that's happening in the industry that you need to talk about so that you level head with the person. How you sound like in a businessman rather than a salesperson trying to sell a 20 years experience vice president sitting somewhere in North America. So the point is that you really need to have something that's written, something that you can follow. And more importantly, as a leader or whoever the owner of the playbook, you need to get the sign up from the salespeople that, hey, you need to follow this process. It has produced results repeatedly. This is what the standard of success going to look like if you continue to do that. You're setting up people for the success.
Sure. That makes sense. So, uh, so Sandeep, in your opinion, and obviously you have seen this play out multiple times, is the sales playbook a top-down initiative? Maybe it's run by the CEO or the VP of sales, or is it more like a bottom-up approach? Who really owns it? Who drives it?
I'm not sure whether there is a right or wrong answer to this kind of question, but it could be your VP sales. It could be the SDR manager, like sales development representative manager, or it could be your top rep who will kind of nail and figured out that this message is eliciting better results, or this kind of emails that's working great because people are coming in and getting a positive response. But more importantly, it should be built on reality and need to be updated every day. I keep on saying that how important it is because it's a breathing document. In several scenarios, when I built a sales team right from the scratch, obviously I took the ownership, but I got this stamp of approval from my sales team saying that, hey, you need to contribute because you are the one who is interacting with the prospects on day-to-day basis. You understand what messaging is resonating very well. So I need your support. But largely it comes from the VP sales or director of sales, because one of the KRAs is that you are hired with people, but also you are hired to coach and mentor. And I think it boils down to you in sales leadership to take the ownership. But it should be concerted effort from other sales team members. So I think the ownership depends on whoever try to get their skin in the game to make it happen.
So basically, we need a top leader to bless the initiative, for lack of a better term, because
Right.
that's when you'll have gravity around the initiative. But then it's a collaborative effort and you need to bring feedback from your SDRs, frontline managers, sales engineers, so that it's very real. It's grounded in reality, right?
I would like to add the point, and this is where I really admire the CEO of Frappe, the ERPNext, the kind of freedom and accountability. I mean, the freedom and accountability both are induced to the team at the organizational level. He believes in giving that kind of space to the people where they can exercise and flex their muscle between their ears, what we call his brain, to put things into the perspective and see that whether your ideas are working or not, and you have that space for that idea to flourish. And that's something with a massive influence that I have from Rishabh as a CEO, that people first culture. And that's where, like, the people are part of the playbook.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point because I was just thinking about that. I was thinking about what a good sales playbook looks like. I think many have heard the term, but if they have a reference of what a good and a powerful sales playbook looks like, they'll be able to probably adopt it relatively sooner. So maybe you can walk us through some of the important chapters of a sales playbook.
What I did is that defining what good looks like. It's like, did you ask this question? Did you do this? And they're like a list of those, but a lot of reps, they will come to you that, hey, Sandeep, you know what? I had such an amazing call. And that's so like quantitatively that you want to measure it. But what defines good? Or if you avoid asking these many questions as part of the process, do you understand the implication of avoiding those questions? I would ask that part. So I would like to quantify in a very different way. Full disclosure, I connect with people who are 2 or 3 steps ahead of me. I mean, I have great mentors. I think I'm a good student of Kevin Dorsey and I've learned a lot. One of the key things, key elements in the playbook chapters are your people, prospects, problem, product, and processes. There's a 5 Ps that stands out to me. So the first section of the playbook should be about people. What are the expectation settings that you have done on daily and weekly and monthly? What should they be producing on daily basis? What are the top attributes of salespeople? What success look like? What qualifies them for, let's say, promotion or termination or something like that? And you get that sign off on that playbook. You set up the goals. What are we expecting from you? What your standard of excellence look like? What are the virtues and values? I'm a big fan of talking about this. Value is something you believe. Virtues are how you behave. I love that. What's your success, struggle? What's working? What's not working? So these are the things that you define, because I think people are your biggest asset in the company. Then the second thing that comes for me is like prospect. Who are you trying to solve the problem? And most people don't have enough actionable items on prospect. So ask them that, how do you define our product? What were we hoping to solve the problem? Did it solve the problem for you? Case studies. Seeing is believing, right? So people love to, hear your success stories and what kind of problems that you solve for your customers. And very important that you have those testimonials, case studies. What are the qualified leads and opportunity? We need to document it and get the sign off from the team. Who to avoid and why? I think that's one of the missing elements in the playbook, that you don't waste your time on certain personas and the companies. I'm a big fan of Jill Conrad, Spin the Sales or something like that. It's a free to download. So I would really recommend people who are listening to this podcast, go ahead and download it. It's a game changer for me. Talk about industry deep dive, who the key players are, what the scene looks like when you're dealing with a buyer's battalion, especially in enterprise sales, because of the complexity of the nature of the sale. You're dealing with so many buyers, on an average, about 7 or 8 buyers that you deal with. It's like, passing a bill in Congress when it comes to making a decision. The second P of the 5 Ps is your prospect. Then comes the problem. And the problem also kind of leads to the product. I'm not a big fan of talking about the product first. Gone are the days where the benefit and feature sells. What is the opposite of benefit? It's a problem, right? And when you try to solve the problem, your statement, your questions, your maybe 30-second commercial, you want to start with the problem that you're trying to solve without even uttering a word about your product. That's what will get you your foot in the door. So what are the problems that exist in the industry? That should go in the playbook, in the problems part. Why do the problem exist? What is the common impact of those problems? So you need to understand people buy solution. Then how do you solve those problems? By asking those questions. I'm a big fan of gap questions by Keenan. I would highly recommend for the SDRs and the AEs out there who are listening to this podcast, go download that book. It will change your life, the way you frame your problem-based discovery questions. The reason that I want to spend a little bit of time with the gap question is that because what are you trying to understand that what's their current state and where they want to be, what's your desired state, and is the gap big enough that will warrant them to put their blood, sweat, and tears to spend that 1 hour, 2 hours, or 10 hours evaluating your product and the services. And that's exactly where the gap question comes into the picture.
You spoke about deeply understanding your prospects and you spoke about products.
So this is where I ask problem-based questions, promoting your product and all this. Very, very important, folks out there. Then the process comes into the picture. Now that's a big piece. This is the meaty stuff that goes around. And a lot of your success is predicated based on this process that you define and follow. This is how you leverage the documented best practices. The process needs to be sold to the team. This is very, very important to follow the process. Now, what are the key elements that encompasses a process? For me, it's like, what's your cadence? Cadence could be your business cadence where you do your one-on-ones, your quarterly meetings, your cross-departmental collaborations, whether you are meeting with the marketing team, the product team to define and devise the messaging that's going to work and yield better results. Also your sales cadence, how you are calling, you are following up. Are you engaging with the social touches? Are you active where your prospects are? So the cadence could be, a lot of variety of different things. This is what you do on day-to-day basis to make things happen.
Sure.
What are the metrics that you're trying to track? What's your top line metrics? What's the bottom line? What's your activity that's happening? What's your conversion, your booking, your win rate, your loss rate? A lot of things that comes with the picture. One-on-ones. I think that 1 hour leaders who will spend with SDRs and A's are very valuable because in 1 hour, you're going to talk about the effort-based metrics. How many calls you do, how many emails. Again, not a big fan of like, oh, you do 50 calls and you'll be successful, but how you're converting those calls in more engaging conversation and ultimately qualified meetings and opportunities as a result. Then your skill-based metrics that I would like to see. How are you converting from those meetings to qualified opportunities, demos? What are the things that worked out? What things didn't work out? What's your struggle? Are you taking a good care of yourself? Are you exercising? So we talk about all these things in 1 hour, and it's a time well worth spent.
Yeah.
Then comes scripting, huge piece. How your dialogue or tonality sound. That's important. What kind of discovery questions that you were asking? Like I said, problem-based discovery or gap questions. Sure. One thing that you got to be careful that how you define those qualified questions. Objection handling, your competitive intelligence that you're gathering, who you're competing with, your demo breakdowns, how you're asking buying questions, things like that. And clearly define what goods look like.
I'm glad that you brought the level of detail that you did, right? Because I know companies that are refining their sales playbook for 2 years, 3 years, and it really takes that time to kind of evolve one that really works, that is very contextualized for you, contextualized for your customers, right? I'm glad that we spend the time on the detail because the devil is really in the detail, right? So, Sandeep, I think you have defined the sales playbook for us. You have given us a glimpse of what a good sales playbook looks like. You also spoke about the chapters of a sales playbook. You spent some time on each of those chapters. Now, for anyone who has not embarked on this journey, obviously your messages get started soon. Otherwise, you're going to become very irrelevant. But starting can also feel overwhelming because this is a non-trivial pursuit. This is a very significant endeavor. So how do we start? Where do we start? Can you make it less intimidating for the audience?
You have early adopters and not your friends and family who are buying your product if you're a startup and pretty much startup context. You've got, like I said, 20, 30 customers, and you see that there's something that's sticking, something that's working for those customers. They're finding the values, the problem they're hoping to solve, and you have answers to it. I think this is where, let's say you've got a couple of sales guys, a couple of account executives, Then you have a couple of SDRs. This is where you start documenting it. Start small. And you can pivot later because, like I said, you keep on editing, keep on updating things. I think the timing is the earlier you get it done, better it is, because then you get into the practice. Then you get into the kind of a building block mode where you're putting all the pieces of the puzzles together and start documenting those things. But it requires a lot of practice. One of the things earlier that I made mistake as a leader, that I wrote the playbook and said, voila, that this is exactly what's going to bring the success. But what's important is that how you have your sales reps practice. Just keep on practice, rehearsing until you internalize it. In my one-on-ones, listen, we have a demo coming up. And before 15 minutes, I'll sit down with them and just say, like, hey, okay, how would you handle this if this comes up? What we want is if else. Your price is too much. Or why don't you send me the proposal and I'll get back to you? Wow, this is a great demo. Now, this is like, kind of a polite brush off. So you need to understand all those kind of parts, how micro level you are involved, not micromanaging. So micro awareness is the key element. That's where you start. Yeah. And then you can make the breathing document and put a lot of stuff in there.
So I guess the key message is to get started and not wait for perfection and not wait for over analysis, but keep improving it. It's a really long journey to get it right. So Sandeep, I think this has been a great conversation. You helped us understand the importance of a playbook. It's very clear. If you have one, hopefully you're on the path to success. If you don't have one, things don't look too good for you. You define what a good sales playbook looks like. Well, you find the chapters for us. And from your vantage point, those chapters include the people, prospect, the problem that you're solving, how your product solves that problem, and finally, a very well-defined process that's repeatable.
There's a bonus here. And sixth is going to be the practice. So the sixth element is practice, because script doesn't say anything. It's you who say things. I mean, you go and watch a movie and you see that one of the actors delivering flawless dialogue, which is very engaging for the audience. But there's hundreds of hours of practice that goes behind the scene. Same thing, when I myself represent national level cricket and state level, table tennis player, I used to practice a lot. A good doctor keep practicing because you go for the accreditation programs to renew your license and things like that. There's a reason that people talk about like practice, practice, practice. You got to get into the character.
Yeah. So let's change gears a little bit, Sandeep. Sales is a tough job. I think it's very rewarding. It's very challenging. I think more and more it demands a lot of intellectual rigor as well. It's not easy to be a quota carrying individual. So how do you keep yourself mentally fit? How do you relax? Maybe you can share your rituals with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I've been in sports a lot. I've been very fortunate to have like kind of a clubhouse that I end up playing table tennis. 1 hour, you play 7 or 8 games. It kind of keeps you active right from here. You're sweating it out. You want to make sure that you are agile. So that kind of works in my favor. I'm a voracious reader. I love reading. I think I would always choose listening to a podcast like yours over on Netflix. That doesn't mean I'm a nerd when it comes to reading the book. I watch a lot of documentaries to make sure that, understand what's going on. More importantly, in everything that you do, there should be a little bit of learning and value addition. Self-investment is one of the things that I learned very early. That has been very rewarding for me. Sales is a very lucrative job, but it's also tough. It's not easy to remember your sales script, your objection handling, the scenario, the situation, cranking up 40, 50 calls just to hear one yes or two yeses. I detach from the outcome. I celebrate the process.
Sure. I think that's good advice. Detach from the outcome, celebrate the process. All right, Sandeep, you have the last word. So very briefly, how do we continue to build a better generation of sellers?
Selling is helping. So when somebody says like seller or you're selling, obviously they can smell your commission breath. They can see that there's something in it for you. So I think, like I said, detaching from the outcome and you follow the process and execute the process, you should feel good about it. Because if you detach from the outcome, that means you're being very true to your prospect, to yourself, to the organization that you work with, because the helping nature comes pouring out. And if you have that kind of a mindset, I think you can go a long way. But I see like there is a dearth of talent here because there's a gap in supply and demand right now. And it's very exciting time, but I don't see there are very talented SDR coming into the fore. Speaking English and you think you can sell doesn't fly that way. There's a lot of things. I mean, look at the lawyers and doctors as a profession. They really care about like, their time and the practice, right? Why sales profession should be different? So my advice only is spend time, self-investment, read books. There's a lot of mentors out there. For the SDRs, connect with a person or SDR who recently become account executive or somebody who became SDR manager from the individual SDR or something like that. I always try to connect with the people who are 2-3 steps ahead than me and learning. Drop your ego.
Cool. Detach from the outcome and love the process. We're going to bring this episode of the Sales School podcast to a closure. Thank you for your time. I truly appreciate it. I know VP of sales are busy, but I appreciate you carved out some time and shared what you know with the community.
Oh, pleasure is mine. Thanks for having me here. I look forward to connecting again.
Thank you, Sandeep.